Hey all, welcome back. This is the next video in the series of types of Star Wars fans. If you haven't seen the introduction or the first type of Star Wars fan video, you can check it out here. So, the first type of Star Wars fan is kids, as I established in the prior video. Spoiler alert, sorry guys if you haven't seen it yet. Now, there's an interesting factor with this, as what happens to children? They grow up. All children become adults. And when you look back on things from your past, you can have a sense of rosy nostalgia like I've talked about, but also, if things destroy that sense of nostalgia or they don't mature with you, they aren't as enjoyable as
an adult as they were when you were a child.
This causes internal dissonance. You guys ever hear that phrase, "this ruined my childhood"? Well, sorry, let me tell you, unless you got a time machine and a gun, you literally can't go back and ruin the childhood of someone who's already an adult. What you can do is ruin their sense of nostalgia. And that's exactly what this video is going to talk about. So kicking off from there, as a natural extension of the first type of Star Wars fans, which are kids, the second type of Star Wars fans are adults who liked Star Wars as kids and are looking back on it through the lens of nostalgia. Heretofore, I will refer to this group as nostalgia fans. This group is the largest type of Star Wars fan.
I am your father.
You don't stay a kid forever, you're an adult for much longer. New Star Wars keeps getting made. So, the largest portion of the audience of Star Wars is people who were introduced to it as children and loved it, and are returning to it as an adult, hoping to feel that same sense of wonder and excitement and mystery, but having adult disenchantment about the world and the way it is. Byproducts of this point of view are as follows. If something which was previously mysterious gets explained in greater detail,
like, say, the physiology of how the Force works.
Midichlorians are a microscopic life form that resides within all living cells. And we are symbions with them. Without the midichlorians, life could not exist, and we would have no knowledge of the Force. They continually speak to us, telling us the will of the Force.
it diminishes that sense of mystery you felt as a child, and without that sense of mystery or driving question, it reduces the enjoyment of the viewing experience for someone from this point of view. Secondly, if things are childish, meaning they're goofy, they're cute, they're not realistic, they don't touch on the nitty-gritty, unhappy details that is the reality of human existence, it's somehow diminished in terms of its value or enjoyment, because it's not considering the point of view from which you're watching it. Now, I talked about how this point of view isn't being considered by George Lucas when he makes Star Wars, and it shows. But this also explains why when he made more Star Wars after the original trilogy, which were kids' movies that had a mass appeal to everyone, there was such an uproar. Like I talked about, The Phantom Menace isn't a bad movie. It's a movie for kids. But people were expecting a movie for adults that dealt with the themes brought up in previous movies for kids. And people might say that, the original trilogy wasn't really for kids, it was more relatable to adults. Well, I would beg to differ using the arguments that I presented in the prior video. And also, if you think about it, a lot of people don't like Return of the Jedi because Ewoks, or cute little teddy bears, defeat the Empire, and they feel like that cheapens the threat of the Empire. Really, I think the point is to show that children are capable of greatness, and not to underestimate those around you who you feel like may not contribute. A good lesson for kids. Now, with this group, you can see why Return of the Jedi would not be liked by nostalgia fans. You can also see why The Phantom Menace wouldn't be liked.
Word!
It also explains why The Force Awakens was so successful when it is literally a blatant ripoff of A New Hope and a total rehash of its plot. People want that. They wanted to revisit the feelings they had as kids when they saw Star Wars, and The Force Awakens is more or less a recitation of A New Hope, except there are a whole bunch of questions introduced to drive the story forward, and that sense of mystery. How does it all connect? What do all these pieces mean? Who are Rey's parents? Why can she do the things that she does? How did we get to this state in the galaxy?
Etc., etc., etc.
Drove interest up through the roof for the following sequel films, which of course failed to deliver on the expectations of that mystery. But that sense of mystery and wonder that could be enjoyed by adults makes The Force Awakens and its content and story, or I should say lack of originality, clearly pegs it as the movie for nostalgia fans. This group also is the target demographic for Rogue One. While Rogue One, I feel like, is the film made by Disney, which is the best in their canon of Star Wars that wasn't made by original creators, what we see is that we have a cast of characters who are thrust into a devastatingly difficult situation. It's a war movie. It's got themes of sacrifice for the greater good. The entire cast of characters pretty much gets killed at the end. They all sacrifice their lives for the hope that someone else can make a difference. What we have is more or less a World War II movie, and it fits within the universe of Star Wars because World War II was one of the influences or elements of the original trilogy. So it feels cohesive, but it doesn't appeal to children because they get invested in these heroes who all die at the end, and there's no more story for them. It doesn't appeal to children because it's so dark. And it doesn't appeal to children because it isn't necessarily about making your way into the wider world. It's more or less objective-based. Hey, we have this terrifying thing that we've got to do something about, or things are going to be wrecked for the whole galaxy. Let's do what we can do, and let's not let anyone stand in our way from doing what we believe is right. So, I guess there is a little bit of morality, but it's tempered with real-world darkness. One of the major plot points of the movie is that not everyone in the Rebel Alliance agrees or has the same feelings about how the fight with the Empire should be handled. You don't know whether or not you can trust Cassian Andor for a good chunk of the movie, and the Rebel Alliance is divided with different factions feeling like different things to do would be the right way to go. And until they get up and just do it anyway, they don't have the backing of the Rebel Alliance. Same thing with the Empire. You have different factions struggling for power against each other with Krennic and Tarkin. You literally have, like, an office politics type situation.
The Emperor is awaiting my report.
One had hoped that he and Lord Vader might have been here for such an occasion.
And I thought it prudent to save you from any potential embarrassment.
Your concerns hardly warranted.
If saying it would only make it so.
And you have unreliable protagonists. They're distrustful. What you have is a story that is super interesting if you're an adult, but is a little too harsh if you're a kid. It also explains why it was so well received amongst Star Wars fans, because it literally takes elements of the classic trilogy and ups the ante on them to make them a little more adult and to fit a little more into that whole PG-13 realm, which I get. I loved the movie as much as anyone else. When the unused footage of X-Wing and Y-Wing pilots came in the Battle of Scarif, I was tickled pink.
Admiral, this is
Blue Leader standing by.
This is Gold Leader, standing by.
This is Red Leader.
Standing by.
It was awesome, because I'm an adult and I have a sense of nostalgia towards Star Wars. I could appreciate it for what it was, but I can also see how it's different from what came before. So, which movies are for nostalgia fans? The Force Awakens and Rogue One. These are the ones that point to nostalgia fans. This group of fans likes Empire the most from the classic trilogy, and it's easy to see why. Luke's worldview is contested and shattered. He has startling revelations about who he is and about the things that he's held as his firm beliefs up to that point. Beloved mentors have more or less betrayed him and been lying to him the entire time, and he's got to accept that truth that the world isn't what he thought it was, that people who he's been fighting with aren't who he thought they were, and he has to realign his worldview to these new facts. While this is something that children experience in adolescence and as they grow up, it's also something that adults can relate to because our views and beliefs are constantly challenged as we learn new things, since our knowledge is always limited. Empire also has the least amount of aliens of any Star Wars film. If you go back and look, you have Chewie, you have Ugnaughts, you have the bounty hunters on the Star Destroyer, and that's it. There's no big menagerie of aliens scene. There's not really anything cute in this movie. The Ugnaughts aren't cute. They're little ugly pig-faced guys, unlike Ewoks, which are cute, or Jawas, which are cute, or cute little kids. So, Empire checks those boxes of adult disenchantment and lack of cuteness. which makes it most people's favorite Star Wars movie, because it's the most serious. This specifically appeals to the nostalgia fan. And since the nostalgia fan is the largest group of Star Wars fans, it explains why everyone says Empire is their favorite. And I'm not trying to challenge it. Empire is great, but I am explaining why I think that is. I think sometimes other movies or shows get diminished in terms of what they can offer to the franchise because people are so hooked on Empire. And it's for those reasons I talked about, of adult nostalgia, of challenging the viewer, of the surprise twist. Also important to note, when we're talking about nostalgia, going back in and re-editing, changing, or altering something that you loved as a child would be the ultimate sin. So, this is where the backlash to the special edition and the Blu-ray updates and everything that came along with it when Star Wars was tinkered with by George Lucas and made different, where that backlash and that anger comes from. The Han shot first group. We know. And I think everyone literally agrees that it was a better arc when he shot first. And it makes sense why that would be such an outrage to a group of people that are disenchanted adults who want to look back fondly on something they remembered as kids. And that scene as a child would have challenged their morality and their views.
Sorry about the mess.
But now it's basically been scrubbed. It's been sanitized to make it more kid-friendly, which, for a group of people who are looking for something that responds to the feeling they felt as a kid, but is more adult, taking one of the most adult moments out of the original film out is like an unpardonable sin. And it goes without saying that this group also really hates Jar Jar. So, that's it for this video, talking about nostalgia fans. In the next video, we're going to talk about the other path that children who become adults can take in terms of Star Wars fandom. Stay tuned.